Ambassador Sarah Chen stood before the towering crystalline spires of the Galactic Council chamber, her human delegation dwarfed by the massive alien architecture. The air hummed with translation fields as hundreds of species gathered for what Earth scientists had called the most important meeting in human history. Above them, holographic displays showed real-time data streams from across the galaxy, but Sarah's eyes were fixed on one particular readout that made her stomach clench with dread. The void swarm was coming. 3 months ago, Earth's deep space monitoring stations had detected something that defied all known physics. Dark matter signatures were moving in coordinated patterns through the galactic rim, consuming entire star systems and leaving behind empty space. Not destroyed, not collapsed into black holes, but completely erased from existence. The mathematical models were terrifying in their precision, and the trajectory was clear. The swarm would reach the inner galactic territories within 18 standard months. The representative from Terra will now address the council, announced Executor HFY, his forearms gesturing dismissively. The Zephyrian's tone carried the same condescension Sarah had grown accustomed to since humanity's recent admission to the Galactic Federation. To most of the galaxy, humans were newcomers, barely evolved from their primitive homeworld, lacking the advanced technology and millennia of spacefaring experience that marked true galactic civilizations. Sarah activated her presentation device, and the chamber's central display shifted to show Earth's data. Gasps and chittering sounds echoed from various species as the images appeared. Dark tendrils of nothingness spreading across stellar cartography maps like an infection. "Honored members of the Council," Sarah began, her voice carrying clearly through the translation matrix. 3 months ago, our monitoring stations detected an unprecedented phenomenon moving through the outer rim territories. We call it the void swarm. It consumes matter at the quantum level, leaving behind regions of space that register as mathematical impossibilities. Our projections indicate it will reach core Federation worlds within 18 months. A ripple of dismissive laughter came from the Hextari delegation, their insectoid forms clicking in what Sarah had learned was their equivalent of scoffing. Elder Crixtanto rose from his position, his carapace gleaming under the chamber's lights. "The humans present us with fairy tales and expect the galaxy to tremble." Their primitive sensors likely detected natural dark matter fluctuations, and their fevered imaginations conjured monsters from shadows. The Centauri representative, Ambassador Thelos, stood next. His people had been spacefaring for over 50,000 years and commanded respect throughout the galaxy. While we appreciate Terra's enthusiasm for galactic security, we must consider the source. Humanity has been aware of space travel for less than 2 centuries. Their understanding of cosmic phenomena is understandably limited. Sarah felt her jaw clench but maintained her diplomatic composure. She had expected this reaction. Humanity's reputation in the galaxy was that of eager but naive newcomers, impressive in their rapid technological development, but lacking the wisdom that came with eons of experience. Most species viewed human warnings the way adults might listen to a child's concerns about monsters under the bed. "With respect, Ambassador Thelos," Sarah replied. "Our data is corroborated by 17 independent observation posts across Federation space. The Andorian Science Collective has verified our readings, as have the Vulpine Research Institutes. This is not a case of human inexperience misinterpreting natural phenomena." Executor HFY's translator conveyed his dismissive tone perfectly. The Andorians are barely more advanced than humans, and the Vulpines have always been prone to dramatic overreactions. More established civilizations have not raised such alarms. Sarah's aide, Dr. Marcus Webb, stepped forward carrying a sealed data crystal. "If I may present additional evidence," he said, his voice steady despite the hostile atmosphere. "This contains quantum resonance patterns that show the void swarm's method of matter consumption. It doesn't simply destroy or convert matter, it removes it from existence entirely. The affected regions show negative energy readings that violate several fundamental laws of physics as we understand them." The chamber erupted in various forms of alien laughter and dismissive gestures. The massive Gorvac delegate, resembling a cross between a rhinoceros and a tank, rumbled his species' version of amusement. "Humans speak of violating physics as if they understand the first principles of reality. Perhaps they should focus on mastering faster-than-light travel before lecturing their betters about cosmic threats." Sarah watched as her carefully prepared presentation was dismissed with prejudice. The data was solid, the threat was real, but humanity's reputation as galactic newcomers undermined every word. She had anticipated this but had hoped that the severity of the evidence might overcome their preconceptions. The Council recognizes that Terra's concerns stem from good intentions, Executor Vexhai announced with finality. However, the Federation cannot allocate resources based on unsubstantiated claims from a recently contacted civilization. The matter is tabled pending review by the Science Directorate, which will be scheduled at their convenience. The dismissal was absolute and humiliating. Sarah gathered her materials as the Council moved on to trade disputes and territorial agreements. The casual dismissal of humanity's warning, treating the potential extinction of galactic civilization as a minor inconvenience to be filed away and forgotten. As the human delegation filed out of the chamber, Sarah caught glimpses of other species representatives engaging in their own conversations. The Zephyrians were already discussing mining rights in the Outer Rim territories that the Void Swarm would reach first. The Hextari were planning colonial expansions that would be meaningless if her projections proved correct. None of them seemed to grasp the magnitude of what was coming. Outside the council chambers, Dr. Webb fell into step beside her. "Ma'am, what are our options now? We've presented the best evidence in human history, and they've dismissed it entirely." Sarah looked up at the alien sky above the Federation capital, where ships from hundreds of worlds came and went in orderly patterns, their pilots secure in the belief that galactic civilization was eternal and unshakable. "We go home, Marcus. We go home and prepare for what's coming. Because if we're right about this, and I pray we're wrong, but if we're right, then in 18 months, the only thing standing between the galaxy and complete annihilation might be a species they consider too primitive to take seriously." The irony wasn't lost on her. Humanity, dismissed as inexperienced and naive, might be the galaxy's last hope simply because they were the only ones who recognized the threat for what it was. As they boarded their transport back to Earth, Sarah began composing her report to the Human Defense Council. If the galaxy wouldn't listen to warnings, perhaps they would respond to action. Admiral Elena Vasquez stood in the war room deep beneath the Cheyenne Mountain complex, surrounded by holographic displays showing Earth's rapidly expanding defensive preparations. The chamber buzzed with activity as military leaders, scientists, and engineers worked frantically to implement humanity's response to the galactic community's dismissal of their warning. 6 months had passed since the failed presentation to the Galactic Council, and the Void Swarm had consumed another 14 star systems. "Status report," Elena commanded, her weathered face reflecting the stress of leading humanity's desperate preparation for a threat the galaxy refused to acknowledge. General Harrison Kane, head of Earth Defense Forces, stepped forward with a tablet displaying deployment statistics. "Ma'am, we've successfully evacuated and relocated every human colony within the projected impact zone. Our people are not happy about abandoning established settlements, but they're cooperating. The Jupiter mining stations have been converted into manufacturing facilities, and we've tripled production of our new weapon systems." Elena nodded grimly. While the galaxy debated trade policies and territorial disputes, humanity had mobilized with the efficiency that had once taken them from primitive agriculture to spaceflight in mere millennia. Every human world had contributed resources, personnel, and expertise to what they privately called the Last Stand Protocol. Dr. Rebecca Torres, Earth's leading theoretical physicist, approached the command station carrying classified research files. "Admiral, the quantum disruption torpedoes are ready for field testing. We've managed to reverse engineer the Void Swarm's matter consumption process and create weapons that can theoretically cancel out their effects. The preliminary tests are promising, but we won't know for certain until we encounter the actual swarm." The quantum disruption torpedoes represented humanity's greatest scientific achievement and their most desperate gamble. While other species had spent millennia perfecting energy weapons and shield technologies, humans had focused their efforts on understanding the fundamental nature of the Void Swarm's attacks. The result was a weapon that existed at the intersection of theoretical physics and applied desperation. "What about the fleet preparations?" Elena asked Captain Sarah Mitchell, who had been promoted to head of naval operations after volunteering for the most dangerous assignment in human history. "We have 200 ships ready for deployment, Admiral. They're not pretty, but they're functional. We've stripped every non-essential system and packed them with the new weapons. The crews understand this is likely a one-way mission, but morale remains high. Every volunteer knows what's at stake. The human fleet was a testament to both their resourcefulness and their limitations. While Galactic Federation ships were elegant masterpieces of advanced technology, humanity's vessels were functional, brutal, and built with a single purpose: to buy time for the galaxy, even if the galaxy didn't want that time bought. Elena turned to examine the tactical displays showing the Void Swarm's continued advance. The dark tendrils of destruction had accelerated, consuming matter at an exponential rate. Each system that fell provided more energy for the swarm's expansion, creating a horrifying feedback loop that would eventually encompass the entire galaxy. "Ma'am," interrupted Lieutenant Commander James Park from the communications station, "we're receiving another transmission from the Federation Council. They're demanding an explanation for our military buildup and colony evacuations. They seem to think we're preparing for some kind of preemptive strike against Federation members." Elena almost laughed at the absurdity. While humanity raced against time to save galactic civilization, the very civilizations they were trying to protect suspected them of warmongering. The irony was bitter but unsurprising. Throughout human history, those who recognized threats first were often viewed with suspicion by those who preferred comfortable ignorance. "Standard diplomatic response, Lieutenant. Tell them our military exercises are internal human affairs and pose no threat to Federation members. Don't mention the Void Swarm. At this point, they've made it clear they won't listen until it's too late." Dr. Torres approached with updated projections. "Admiral, our latest calculations show the swarm will reach the first major Federation worlds in 8 months. The Centauri system will likely be the initial target, followed by the core worlds within weeks. Once it reaches that density of inhabited systems, the rate of consumption will become unstoppable." Elena studied the projections with the grim fascination of a general planning humanity's last battle. The mathematics were ruthlessly clear. If the Void Swarm reached the core Federation worlds, the resulting energy consumption would allow it to spread throughout the entire galactic arm within months. Every inhabited world, every space station, every trace of galactic civilization would be erased from existence. "There's something else, Admiral," Dr. Torres continued, her voice carrying a note of scientific excitement despite the grim circumstances. "Our deep space monitors have detected something unexpected. The Void Swarm appears to be showing signs of directed intelligence. It's not just consuming matter randomly. It's specifically targeting systems with high concentrations of complex organized matter, inhabited worlds, and technological infrastructure." The implications hit Elena immediately. It's hunting. This isn't a natural phenomenon or even a mindless force of destruction. Something is directing it toward populated systems. General Kane frowned at the tactical implications. If it's intelligent, that means it can adapt, change tactics, potentially even communicate. That could work for us or against us, depending on its motivations. Elena considered the new information carefully. An intelligent enemy was both more dangerous and more predictable than a natural disaster. Intelligence implied goals, strategies, and potentially weaknesses that could be exploited. But it also meant that humanity was not just facing annihilation, but was engaged in a war against an enemy that had already demonstrated the ability to erase entire star systems. "Double our production schedules," Elena ordered. "If this thing is hunting inhabited worlds, then every day we delay gives it more targets and more energy to grow stronger. We move up our deployment timeline." As her staff dispersed to implement the new orders, Elena remained alone with the tactical displays. The human fleet was impressive by human standards, but laughably small compared to the combined might of the Galactic Federation. Yet the Federation remained focused on politics and trade, while an existential threat approached their core worlds. She thought about the burden humanity had unknowingly accepted. They had become the galaxy's protectors not through choice or design, but through the simple fact that they were the only species willing to acknowledge reality. It was a role that might well result in human extinction. But Elena found a strange pride in the knowledge that humanity would face annihilation while trying to save those who had dismissed their warnings. The communication console chimed with an incoming message from the outer monitoring stations. Elena activated the display, expecting another routine update on the swarm's progress. Instead, she found herself looking at readings that made her blood run cold. The Void Swarm had accelerated again. Their 8-month timeline had just become 6 months, and the rate of acceleration was increasing exponentially. Whatever intelligence was directing the swarm had apparently decided to quicken its pace. Elena activated the emergency communication system that would reach every human military installation simultaneously. "This is Admiral Vasquez. Condition red, all leave is cancelled. All ships are to achieve combat readiness within 72 hours. The timeline has moved up. We deploy in 3 weeks." The first Centauri colonies disappeared on a Tuesday. Admiral Elena Vasquez watched the real-time feeds from humanity's deep space monitoring network as 3 entire star systems simply ceased to exist. No explosions, no debris fields, no gravitational anomalies. One moment the sensors registered normal stellar activity, thriving colonies and busy space traffic. The next moment the sensors detected empty space where solar systems had existed for billions of years. The Galactic Federation's response was swift and predictable. Panic. Within hours, emergency sessions were called across Federation space. The same species who had dismissed humanity's warnings 9 months earlier now scrambled to understand an enemy that had already consumed 47 star systems and showed no signs of slowing. Elena watched the intercepted Federation communications with grim satisfaction as alien leaders who had once mocked human, primitive fears now begged for information about the Void Swarm. "Ma'am," Captain Sarah Mitchell reported from her position at the tactical station, "we're receiving over 300 communication requests from Federation worlds. They're all asking for our Void Swarm data." "Denied," Elena replied without hesitation. They had their chance to listen. Now they'll have to live with the consequences of their arrogance. Elena's response was harsher than her normal diplomatic approach. But these weren't normal circumstances. Humanity had spent months preparing for this moment while the galaxy had dismissed their warnings. Now that the threat was undeniably real, the same aliens who had called humans naive and inexperienced wanted access to the research they had ridiculed. Lieutenant Commander James Park approached with an urgent message tablet. "Admiral, we're receiving a direct communication from Executor Vexhai himself. He's requesting an immediate emergency meeting with human representatives. His message includes what appears to be an apology for the Council's previous dismissal of our warnings." Elena laughed, but there was no humor in the sound. "An apology? After 47 systems have been erased from existence, he offers an apology. What does he want?" Park consulted his tablet. "He's asking for our complete Void Swarm research data, our defensive strategies, and immediate deployment of human forces to protect core Federation worlds. He's also offering humanity full membership in the Federation High Command and access to advanced alien technologies in exchange for our cooperation." The offer was everything humanity had dreamed of when they first made contact with galactic civilization. Full membership in the Federation High Command would give humans equal status with the galaxy's most advanced species. Access to alien technologies could advance human development by thousands of years. It was everything the human race had hoped to achieve through diplomacy and cooperation. Elena considered the offer for exactly 10 seconds before rejecting it. "Send a response to Executor Vexhai," she instructed. "Tell him that humanity appreciates his newfound recognition of our capabilities, but we have already committed our resources to defending the galaxy according to our own strategic assessment. We will not be diverting forces to protect the core worlds while the outer territories are abandoned. The decision would likely be seen as petty revenge by some, but Elena understood the strategic reality better than the panicking Federation leaders. The Void Swarm grew stronger with each system it consumed. Allowing it to devour the outer territories while focusing defense on core worlds would simply provide the enemy with more energy and resources. The only chance to stop the swarm was to confront it at its current position and prevent further expansion. Dr. Rebecca Torres entered the command center carrying updated analysis reports. "Admiral, our intelligence assessment of the Void Swarm has been completed. The entity appears to be a collective intelligence comprised of dark matter constructs that exist partially outside normal space-time. It consumes organized matter to fuel expansion into our dimensional framework. Most importantly, our quantum disruption weapons appear to be the only known technology capable of interfering with its matter consumption process." Elena studied the scientific data with the attention of a military strategist planning humanity's greatest battle. The quantum disruption torpedoes were humanity's secret weapon, developed through theoretical physics research that the galaxy's older species had considered unnecessary. While aliens had perfected energy weapons over millennia, humans had focused on understanding fundamental reality. That focus had created weapons specifically designed to counter the Void Swarm's attack methods. "How confident are we in the weapon effectiveness?" Elena asked. 73% confidence based on theoretical models and limited testing. "But Admiral, there's something else. Our analysis suggests the Void Swarm is testing Federation defenses. The pattern of its attacks indicates it's learning about galactic military capabilities before launching a major assault on core worlds." Elena nodded grimly. An intelligent enemy that learned from each encounter was humanity's worst-case scenario, but it also provided opportunities. If the Swarm was studying Federation military responses, it would be unprepared for human tactics and weapons. The element of surprise might be humanity's greatest advantage. "Status of the human fleet?" Elena inquired. Captain Mitchell consulted her displays. 200 ships fully armed and ready for deployment. Crews are at maximum readiness. We also have confirmation that the civilian evacuation is complete. Every human colony and outpost has been relocated outside the projected combat zone. The human evacuation had been a masterpiece of logistics and cooperation. While the Federation debated and dismissed warnings, humanity had quietly relocated millions of people, abandoned valuable infrastructure, and repositioned their entire civilization to survive the coming conflict. It was a sacrifice that demonstrated humanity's commitment to fighting the Void Swarm, regardless of the cost. "Admiral," interrupted Communications Officer Lisa Chen, "we're detecting massive Federation fleet movements. It looks like they're finally mobilizing their military forces, but they're all converging on core worlds. They're implementing a defensive strategy that abandons the outer territories entirely." Elena examined the tactical displays showing Federation ship movements. The alien fleets were impressive in size and technology, but their strategy was fundamentally flawed. By retreating to core worlds and abandoning outer territories, they were essentially providing the Void Swarm with a continuous supply of consumed matter to fuel its growth. When the Swarm eventually reached the core worlds, it would be exponentially more powerful than its current state. "They're feeding it," Elena realized. "Every system they abandon gives the Swarm more energy. By the time it reaches their defensive positions, it will be unstoppable." Dr. Torres nodded grimly. "Our calculations show that if the current Federation strategy continues, the Void Swarm will have consumed enough matter to breach any conceivable defense by the time it reaches core worlds. Their retreat strategy is essentially a guaranteed extinction scenario." Elena made the decision that would define humanity's role in galactic history. "We deploy immediately. The fleet will move to intercept the Void Swarm at its current position. We cannot allow it to consume any more systems. This is humanity's fight now." As her staff began implementing deployment orders, Elena reflected on the irony of the situation. The galaxy had dismissed humanity as naive and inexperienced, but those very qualities had allowed humans to see clearly what advanced civilizations had missed. Sometimes, Elena thought, being young and foolish was exactly what the universe needed. The communication console chimed with an incoming priority message from Earth's leadership. Elena accepted the transmission, expecting final authorization for the deployment. Instead, she found herself looking at President Maria Santos, whose expression carried the weight of humanity's most critical decision. "Admiral Vasquez," President Santos began, "you have full authorization to proceed with Operation Last Stand. The entire human race stands behind you. Bring our people home." The human fleet emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the Kepler 442 system, humanity's chosen battleground for what might be civilization's last stand. Admiral Elena Vasquez stood on the bridge of the flagship UES Defiance, watching tactical displays that showed the approaching Void Swarm as a dark tendril of absolute nothingness stretching across space. The enemy would reach their position in 6 hours. "Fleet status report," Elena commanded, her voice carrying the calm authority that had guided humanity through its darkest preparation. Captain Sarah Mitchell consulted her tactical displays. "All 200 ships are in formation and ready for combat. Quantum disruption torpedoes are loaded and armed. Long-range sensors confirm the Void Swarm is maintaining its current trajectory and speed. Estimated time to contact 5 hours 57 minutes. Elena studied the enemy approach with the analytical mind that had made her humanity's premier strategic thinker. The void swarm appeared on sensors as a region of space where mathematics failed, where the fundamental constants of reality became meaningless. It consumed matter not through any known physical process but by somehow removing the very possibility of existence from anything it touched. Dr. Rebecca Torres approached the command station carrying her final analysis reports. "Admiral, we've completed our battlefield assessment. The void swarm is definitely showing signs of intelligent coordination. It's adapted its formation specifically to counter traditional energy weapons and defensive shields. However, our quantum disruption technology operates on principles it hasn't encountered before." Elena nodded, understanding the implications. The void swarm had learned to counter every weapon the Galactic Federation possessed, but humanity's approach to warfare was fundamentally different. Where aliens had perfected energy projection and defensive barriers, humans had focused on manipulating the underlying structure of reality itself. "What about Federation response to our deployment?" Elena asked. Lieutenant Commander James Park checked his communications station. "The Federation Council is demanding we withdraw immediately and coordinate with their defensive strategy. They're claiming our independent action violates galactic military protocols. Executor Vexhai has sent 17 messages in the last hour, each more urgent than the last." Elena allowed herself a bitter smile. Even facing extinction, the Federation leadership remained focused on protocol and hierarchy rather than results. They still couldn't accept that humanity, the species they had dismissed as primitive, might be better equipped to handle this crisis than civilizations with millennia of experience. "Any Federation ships joining our position?" Elena inquired. "Negative, ma'am. All Federation fleets are maintaining defensive positions around core worlds. We're completely on our own." Elena had expected as much. The Federation's retreat strategy was based on fear and established doctrine, not tactical analysis. They couldn't conceive of a scenario where direct engagement might be preferable to defensive positioning. It was a failure of imagination that might doom galactic civilization. "Long-range communications from the outer territories," reported Communications Officer Lisa Chen. "We're receiving distress signals from colonies that haven't been evacuated. The Andorian Research Station Alpha is requesting immediate assistance. They have 14,000 civilians who couldn't make it to evacuation transports." Elena felt the weight of command settle heavily on her shoulders. Saving those civilians would require diverting ships from the main battle, potentially weakening humanity's only chance to stop the void swarm. But abandoning 14,000 innocent lives went against every principle that had motivated humanity's decision to fight. "Detach." "The 7th Squadron," Elena ordered. "Captain Rodriguez will extract those civilians and get them to safety. The rest of the fleet maintains formation." Captain Mitchell looked concerned. "Ma'am, that reduces our effective firepower by 12%. If the quantum disruption torpedoes don't work as expected, we might need every ship." "Understood, Captain. But we're not just fighting to stop the void swarm. We're fighting to preserve the principles that make civilization worth saving. Those civilians get evacuated." As the human fleet prepared for battle, Elena reflected on the journey that had brought them to this moment. Humanity had gone from being dismissed as galactic newcomers to becoming the last hope for galactic survival in less than a year. It was a transformation that spoke to both human adaptability and the dangerous complacency of established civilizations. Dr. Torres approached with final weapon calibration reports. "Admiral, the quantum disruption torpedoes are configured for maximum effectiveness against the void swarm's matter consumption fields. However, I need to inform you of a significant risk. If our calculations are wrong, the torpedoes could create cascading dimensional instabilities that would effectively do the void swarm's work for it." Elena understood the implication. Humanity's secret weapon might inadvertently destroy the very reality they were trying to protect. It was a risk that demonstrated the desperate nature of their situation, but also the courage required to face an enemy that conventional weapons couldn't touch. "Probability of dimensional instability?" Elena asked. "Approximately 8% based on our theoretical models. But Admiral, there's no way to be certain without field testing, and we only get one chance to test these weapons in actual combat." Elena considered the statistics. A 92% chance of success versus certain extinction if they did nothing. From a strategic perspective, the choice was obvious. but the weight of potentially destroying reality was almost overwhelming. We proceed with the mission, Elena decided. Sometimes the only choice is between a small chance of victory and certain defeat. The tactical displays updated with new information as the Void Swarm approached. The enemy formation was adapting in real time, reshaping itself into patterns that would maximize its defensive capabilities against traditional weapons. Elena watched with professional interest as the swarm demonstrated intelligence that surpassed many of the galaxy's spacefaring species. "Incoming transmission from Earth," announced Lieutenant Park. "Admiral, it's President Santos with final authorization codes." Elena accepted the transmission, and President Maria Santos appeared on the main display. Behind her, Elena could see the emergency command center where Earth's leadership was monitoring humanity's most critical battle. "Admiral Vasquez," President Santos began, "you carry the hopes and prayers of the entire human race. Whatever happens in the next few hours will define humanity's place in galactic history. Make us proud." Elena felt the weight of that responsibility settle alongside the tactical concerns of the coming battle. Humanity had chosen to stand alone against an enemy that had already consumed 53 star systems. They were either about to save galactic civilization or die in the attempt, and either outcome would be achieved without support from the very civilizations they were trying to protect. "Fleet-wide communication," Elena ordered. "All ships, all crews." The communication system activated, linking Elena's voice to every human vessel in the formation. 200 ships, 40,000 crew members representing humanity's entire military capability, waited for her words. "This is Admiral Vasquez. In 30 minutes we will engage an enemy that has destroyed entire star systems and threatens every inhabited world in the galaxy. The species that dismissed our warnings now cower behind defensive lines, while we prepare to face annihilation on their behalf. We are alone, outmatched, and fighting an enemy that conventional wisdom says cannot be defeated. We are also human, and that means we do not surrender, we do not retreat, and we do not abandon those who cannot protect themselves. Today we show the galaxy what humanity means." As Elena finished her address, sensors detected the first direct contact with the Void Swarm's advanced tendrils. The battle for galactic civilization was about to begin. The first wave of quantum disruption torpedoes struck the Void Swarm's leading edge at 1427 Galactic Standard Time, creating explosions of light that existed in dimensions human eyes weren't equipped to perceive. Admiral Elena Vasquez watched the tactical displays as reality itself bent and twisted around the impact points, the fundamental forces of existence becoming visible as cascading waves of energy that painted space in impossible colors. "Direct hit on the primary consumption nodes," Captain Sarah Mitchell reported, her voice tight with concentration as she coordinated the fleet's attack patterns. "Sensors are detecting significant disruption to the swarm's matter absorption fields. The quantum disruption effect is spreading through their formation." Elena felt a surge of hope as the data streams confirmed what humanity had desperately hoped to achieve. The Void Swarm, which had consumed 53 star systems without slowing, was actually being damaged by human weapons. The theoretical physics that other species had considered unnecessary had produced the galaxy's first effective defense against an enemy that seemed unstoppable. But the Void Swarm's response was swift and terrifying. The dark tendrils of nothingness suddenly shifted formation, abandoning the consumption pattern they had maintained for months. Instead of the steady advance that had characterized their previous attacks, the swarm began to pulse and contract, gathering itself into a dense formation that radiated malevolent intelligence. "Admiral," called Dr. Rebecca Torres from her position at the science station, "the Void Swarm is adapting to our weapons. It's restructuring its dimensional interface to minimize the effects of quantum disruption. We might have caught them off guard, but they're learning fast." Elena studied the enemy's adaptation with the calculating mind of a strategist who had spent months preparing for this exact scenario. The Void Swarm's ability to modify its tactics in real time was both impressive and deeply concerning. Humanity had achieved surprise, but that advantage was already diminishing. "Second wave of torpedoes, all ships," Elena commanded. "Target the restructuring nodes. Don't let them complete their adaptation." The human fleet responded with the precision of crews who had drilled for this moment until the attack patterns became instinctive. 188 ships launched their quantum disruption torpedoes in a coordinated barrage that lit up space with energies that existed Beyond the normal electromagnetic spectrum, the results were spectacular and horrifying. Where the torpedoes struck, the void swarm simply ceased to exist, leaving behind regions of space that registered as mathematical impossibilities on human sensors. But for every section of the swarm that was disrupted, two more seemed to emerge from folds in space-time that hadn't existed moments before. "It's not just adapting," Dr. Torres announced, her voice carrying the tone of a scientist confronting data that challenged fundamental assumptions. "It's calling reinforcements. The quantum disruption is creating dimensional rifts that allow more of the swarm to enter our reality from wherever it originates." Elena felt ice form in her stomach as she understood the implications. Humanity's greatest weapon wasn't just failing to stop the enemy, it was actively making the situation worse. Every torpedo that disrupted part of the swarm created openings for more swarm entities to emerge from whatever realm they inhabited. "All ships, cease fire," Elena ordered, her voice carrying across the fleet communication network. "We're feeding it. Every attack is creating more enemies." The human fleet held its fire as tactical officers scrambled to assess the new situation. On the main display, the void swarm had grown to nearly twice its original size, the additional mass emerging from dimensional fissures that human weapons had inadvertently created. The enemy was no longer just consuming matter from this reality. It was importing additional mass from parallel dimensions. Captain Mitchell approached with updated tactical assessments. "Admiral, we have a problem. The 7th Squadron, attempting to evacuate the Andorian research station, is reporting that the civilian transports are trapped by spatial distortions. Captain Rodriguez estimates they need another 40 minutes to complete the evacuation, but the void swarm will reach their position in 23 minutes. Elena found herself facing the nightmare scenario that had haunted her planning. The mission to save galactic civilization was failing, and now human lives were directly threatened by the consequences of their intervention. The choice between tactical withdrawal and humanitarian rescue would define not just the battle's outcome but humanity's character. "Order Captain Rodriguez to abandon the evacuation and withdraw immediately," Elena commanded, her voice steady despite the weight of the decision. "We cannot risk additional ships." "Ma'am," interrupted Lieutenant Commander Park from the communications station, "Captain Rodriguez is refusing the withdrawal order. His message reads, negative, Admiral. We do not abandon civilians. Humanity stands for something better. The 7th Squadron is maintaining position and continuing evacuation operations." Elena felt a complex mixture of pride and frustration. Captain Rodriguez's refusal to abandon civilians demonstrated the principles that had motivated humanity's decision to fight. But it also meant that human ships were about to be consumed by an enemy that was growing stronger with each passing moment. "New contact," announced the sensor operator, his voice carrying alarm. "Multiple Federation ships are approaching our position. Configuration suggests a full battle fleet." Elena activated the long-range communication system, expecting to coordinate with Federation forces that had finally decided to engage the enemy directly. Instead, she found herself looking at Executor Vexhai, whose four-armed form was clearly visible in what appeared to be a Federation command ship. "Admiral Vasquez," Vexhai began, his translation matrix conveying urgency that bordered on panic, "you must cease your attacks immediately. Our analysis indicates that your weapons are making the situation worse. You are endangering the entire galaxy with your primitive understanding of quantum mechanics." Elena stared at the Federation leader who had dismissed humanity's warnings and was now criticizing their rescue attempt. "Executor Vexhai, we are attempting to save 14,000 civilians while engaging an enemy that your people refused to acknowledge until it had already consumed 53 star systems. Our weapons are the only technology that has shown any effectiveness against this threat." "Effectiveness?" Vexhai's translator conveyed something approaching outrage. "Your weapons have doubled the size of the threat. We are ordering you to withdraw immediately and allow proper Federation forces to handle this situation." Elena looked at the tactical display showing Federation ships maintaining a safe distance from the void swarm while human vessels fought desperately to buy time for civilian evacuation. The contrast between human commitment and Federation caution was stark and revealing. "With respect, Executor, your proper Federation forces have been hiding behind defensive lines while the outer territories burned. We will continue our mission." Vexhai's response was immediate and threatening. "Admiral, If you do not withdraw, we will be forced to consider your actions as rogue military activity threatening galactic security. The Federation cannot allow a primitive species to endanger civilized worlds through reckless action. Elena cut the transmission without responding, focusing instead on the tactical situation. The Void Swarm was 15 minutes away from reaching the 7th Squadron's position, where Captain Rodriguez was still working desperately to evacuate Andorian civilians. The Federation fleet maintained a safe distance while criticizing humanity's efforts to save innocent lives. "Dr. Torres," Elena called. "Do we have any options? Any way to use our weapons without making the situation worse?" Torres consulted her instruments with the focused intensity of a scientist racing against time. "There might be something, Admiral. If we concentrate all remaining torpedoes on a single point and overload the quantum disruption fields, we might be able to create a dimensional cascade that collapses the rifts we've already opened. It's theoretically possible, but the energy release would be enormous." Elena understood the implication immediately. "How enormous?" "Large enough to destroy everything within a 3-light-year radius, including our own fleet. But Admiral, it might be the only way to stop the swarm before it reaches inhabited systems." Admiral Elena Vasquez stood in the command center of the UES Defiance, surrounded by tactical displays that painted a desperate picture. The Void Swarm had grown to twice its original size and was advancing steadily toward both the human fleet and the 7th Squadron's position. 14,000 Andorian civilians hung in the balance, while Federation ships maintained safe distance and demanded humanity's withdrawal from the battle they refused to join. "Admiral," Captain Sarah Mitchell reported, "Captain Rodriguez confirmed successful evacuation of the last civilian transport. The 7th Squadron is beginning withdrawal, but they're still 7 minutes away from safe distance when the Void Swarm reaches their position." Elena calculated the timing with the precision of a commander who understood that mathematics would determine whether thousands of people lived or died. 7 minutes for the 7th Squadron to reach safety. 6 minutes until the Void Swarm consumed their position. The numbers were brutally clear. "Dr. Torres," Elena called, "final assessment on the dimensional cascade option. Can we time it to give the 7th Squadron enough time to escape?" Rebecca Torres consulted her quantum calculations with desperate intensity. "Negative, Admiral. The cascade has to be initiated while the dimensional rifts are still active, or the window closes permanently. If we wait for the 7th Squadron to reach safe distance, the opportunity to collapse the rifts is lost forever." Elena understood the terrible mathematics. Humanity could save 14,000 Andorian civilians and sacrifice their chance to stop the Void Swarm. Or they could attempt to end the threat and accept that 800 human crew members would die in the process. It was exactly the kind of impossible choice that had defined humanity's rise to galactic prominence. "Communication from Captain Rodriguez," Lieutenant Commander Park announced. "He's detected our targeting calculations, Admiral. His message reads, 'Don't wait for us. Do what needs to be done.' We knew the risks when we volunteered." Elena felt the weight of command settle on her shoulders like a physical burden. Captain Rodriguez and his crews had volunteered for a mission that might save galactic civilization, knowing that survival was unlikely. They were asking her to sacrifice their lives for the greater good, and the terrible reality was that it might be the right choice. "Incoming priority transmission from Earth," Communications Officer Lisa Chen reported. "Admiral, it's President Santos." Elena accepted the transmission and President Maria Santos appeared on the main display. Behind her, Elena could see the emergency command center where humanity's leadership was monitoring the battle in real time. "Admiral Vasquez," President Santos began, "we've been analyzing the tactical situation from Earth. The decision you're facing goes beyond military strategy. Whatever choice you make will define humanity's principles for generations to come. You have our complete support, whatever you decide." Elena understood the unspoken message. President Santos was telling her that humanity would accept either choice, saving their own people or sacrificing them for the greater good. But Elena also knew that the choice would haunt her for the rest of her life, regardless of the outcome. "Fleet-wide communication," Elena ordered. "All ships, all crews." The communication system linked Elena's voice to every human vessel, including the 7th Squadron racing toward safety, while the Void Swarm closed the distance. 188 ships with nearly 40,000 crew members waited for orders that would determine their fate. "This is Admiral Vasquez. We have discovered a way to stop the Void Swarm permanently. but it requires immediate action that will not allow time for the 7th Squadron to reach safe distance. Captain Rodriguez and his crews have already given their answer, but I will not order any of you to die without your consent. This is a volunteer mission. Any ship that wishes to withdraw has 30 seconds to break formation and retreat to safe distance. Elena watched the tactical displays as her fleet received the most terrible order a commander could give. She was asking her people to choose between their own survival and the possibility of saving galactic civilization. It was a decision that would test everything humanity claimed to believe about courage, sacrifice, and the value of innocent life. For 15 seconds, no ships moved. The entire human fleet maintained formation while crews debated the choice between retreat and sacrifice. Elena felt her heart pound as she waited to see how many of her people would choose certain death over the possibility of saving the galaxy. Then, one by one, ships began to break formation. Elena watched as 12 vessels accelerated away from the fleet, their crews choosing survival over sacrifice. She felt no judgment toward those who withdrew. They had already volunteered for a mission that offered little hope of survival, and they had every right to choose life when the odds became impossible. But 176 ships remained in formation. "Admiral," Captain Mitchell reported, her voice carrying the quiet pride of someone who had witnessed humanity at its finest. 176 ships ready for dimensional cascade. Captain Rodriguez confirms the 7th Squadron is maintaining position and ready to coordinate targeting with the main fleet. Elena felt tears she had been holding back for hours finally run down her cheeks. Her people, human beings who had every reason to retreat and save themselves, were choosing to face annihilation for the sake of strangers who had dismissed and insulted them. It was humanity's greatest moment and their potential ending. Dr. Torres, initiate dimensional cascade preparation. All ships, prepare for synchronized quantum disruption overload. Torres began the process of configuring humanity's remaining weapons for a single, coordinated attack that would either save the galaxy or destroy everything within 3 light years. The quantum disruption torpedoes were designed for precision strikes, not the massive energy release required for dimensional manipulation. Using them this way was essentially turning each weapon into a small-scale reality bomb. "Federation ships are moving," the sensor operator announced. "They're approaching our position." Elena activated long-range communications and found herself looking at Executor Vexhai again. But this time, the alien leader's expression conveyed something different than condescension or fear. It looked almost like respect. "Admiral Vasquez," Vexhai began, "our scientists have confirmed your analysis. The dimensional cascade represents the only possibility of stopping the Void Swarm's expansion. We cannot arrive in time to assist, but we want you to know that the Federation will remember humanity's sacrifice." Elena felt bitter irony at the timing of the Federation's recognition. After months of dismissing human warnings and criticizing human tactics, they were finally acknowledging humanity's competence just as the human fleet prepared to die implementing the solution aliens couldn't conceive. "Executor Vexhai," Elena replied, "tell the galaxy what happened here. Tell them that when extinction threatened every inhabited world, humans stood in the gap. Tell them that we chose to fight when others chose to hide." Elena cut the transmission and focused on the tactical displays. The Void Swarm was 3 minutes away from consuming the 7th Squadron's position. The dimensional cascade required 2 minutes to reach critical energy levels. The timing would be catastrophically close, but it might be enough. "All ships report ready for synchronized firing," Captain Mitchell announced. "Dimensional cascade countdown initiated. 2 minutes to optimal energy release." Elena watched as the countdown began, marking the final moments of the largest coordinated sacrifice in human history. In 2 minutes, nearly 40,000 human beings would cease to exist in the hope that their deaths might save trillions of alien lives across the galaxy. 1 minute to cascade initiation, Dr. Torres reported. "Quantum fields are approaching critical resonance. Admiral, once we begin this process, there's no way to stop it." Elena understood that she was about to order the potential extinction of the human space fleet, but she also knew that retreat would guarantee the extinction of galactic civilization. Sometimes, she reflected, the only choice was between certain defeat and the possibility of victory at an unacceptable cost. 30 seconds to dimensional cascade, Torres announced. "All ships confirm ready status." Elena took a deep breath and prepared to give the order that would define humanity's legacy in galactic history. Admiral Elena Vasquez spoke the words that would either save galactic civilization or destroy it. All ships, execute dimensional cascade. Fire. 176 human vessels released their remaining quantum disruption torpedoes in perfect synchronization, creating an energy release that existed beyond the normal spectrum of reality. The weapons, designed for precision strikes against the Void Swarm's matter consumption fields, overloaded their dimensional interface systems and tore holes in the fabric of space-time itself. The result was both beautiful and terrifying. Space around the Void Swarm erupted in cascading waves of energy that painted the cosmos in colors that had no names. Dimensional rifts collapsed in on themselves, creating gravitational anomalies that pulled matter from alternate realities, while simultaneously ejecting exotic particles into parallel dimensions. The Void Swarm, caught in the center of the cascade, found its matter absorption abilities turned against itself as the quantum overload forced it to consume its own dimensional anchors. Dr. Rebecca Torres watched her instruments with the fascination of a scientist witnessing the fundamental forces of reality being rewritten. "Admiral, it's working. The dimensional rifts are collapsing faster than the swarm can adapt. The energy feedback is disrupting its coherence matrix." Elena felt a surge of hope as tactical displays showed the Void Swarm contracting, its dark tendrils of nothingness being pulled into the dimensional cascade that humanity's sacrifice had created. But the energy release was so massive that it threatened to destroy everything within its expanding radius, including the human fleet that had initiated it. Hull stress approaching critical levels, Captain Sarah Mitchell reported as the UES Defiance groaned under forces that no ship was designed to withstand. "We have structural failures on deck 7 through 15. Emergency bulkheads are holding, but not for long." Elena watched the countdown to their own destruction with the calm acceptance of someone who had always known this moment was coming. The dimensional cascade would consume the human fleet within minutes, but those minutes might be enough to save the galaxy from an enemy that had already destroyed 53 star systems. Communication from the 7th Squadron, Lieutenant Commander James Park announced. "Captain Rodriguez reports successful collapse of the primary dimensional rift. The Void Swarm's expansion has stopped." Elena felt tears of pride and grief as she realized that Captain Rodriguez and his crews were dying as heroes. Their sacrifice measured not in personal glory but in star systems saved and civilizations preserved. They had chosen to face annihilation for the sake of strangers who had dismissed their warnings and criticized their methods. But then something unexpected happened. The dimensional cascade, instead of consuming everything in its expanding radius, began to stabilize. The chaotic energy patterns settled into coherent waves that pushed outward from the Void Swarm's position, carrying the enemy's scattered remains into dimensional exile while leaving normal space-time intact. "Admiral," Dr. Torres announced with wonder in her voice, "the cascade is self-limiting. The quantum disruption fields are creating a stable dimensional barrier that's ejecting the Void Swarm from our reality without destroying local space-time. We might actually survive this." Elena stared at the tactical displays as the impossible became real. The dimensional cascade was not only destroying the Void Swarm, but doing so in a way that preserved the matter and energy of local space. Humanity's desperate gamble had succeeded beyond their wildest hopes. "All ships damage report," Elena ordered, hardly daring to believe that her people might actually survive their moment of ultimate sacrifice. Captain Mitchell coordinated with the fleet's damage control teams, her voice carrying disbelief as the reports came in. "Admiral, we have significant structural damage across all vessels, but no total losses. The 7th Squadron reports critical damage, but all ships intact. We're hurt, but we're alive." Elena felt relief wash over her as she realized that nearly 40,000 human lives had been preserved, despite facing certain death. The crews who had volunteered for annihilation were going home to their families, carrying with them the knowledge that their courage had saved galactic civilization. Long-range sensors confirmed complete dispersal of the Void Swarm, the sensor operator reported. No trace of the entity remains in local space-time. The threat has been eliminated. Elena activated fleet-wide communications to address the crews who had just accomplished the impossible. "All ships, all crews, this is Admiral Vasquez. The Void Swarm has been destroyed. Your courage and sacrifice have saved not just human civilization, but every inhabited world in the galaxy. You have made humanity proud." As cheers echoed across the communication channels, Elena received an incoming transmission from the Federation fleet that had maintained safe distance throughout the battle. Executor Vexhai appeared on the main display, but his expression now carried genuine respect and something that might have been shame. "Admiral Vasquez," Vexhai began, "the Federation owes humanity a debt that can never be repaid. Your species has accomplished what our greatest minds deemed impossible. You have saved us all while we cowered in fear and criticized your efforts. The galaxy will remember this day as humanity's finest hour." Elena looked at the alien leader who had dismissed human warnings and demanded their withdrawal from the battle that saved his civilization. "Executor Vexhai, humanity fought to preserve the principles we believe in, not for recognition or gratitude. But the galaxy should remember something else about this day." "What is that, Admiral?" "Remember that the species you dismissed as primitive and inexperienced were the ones who stood against extinction when established civilizations chose retreat. Remember that sometimes being young and foolish is exactly what the universe needs." Elena cut the transmission and focused on coordinating the fleet's return to human space. As the ships prepared for the journey home, she reflected on the irony of humanity's situation. They had saved the galaxy from annihilation, but they had done so while the very civilizations they protected criticized their methods and demanded their withdrawal. 6 months later, Elena stood before the Galactic Council once again, but this time the reception was markedly different. The same species who had mocked human warnings now listened to every word with respectful attention. Humanity had been granted full membership in the Federation High Command, access to advanced alien technologies, and recognition as the galaxy's premier experts on exotic threats. But Elena found the recognition hollow compared to the knowledge that her people had done the right thing when it mattered most. The galaxy might remember humanity's victory over the Void Swarm, but she would always remember the moment when nearly 40,000 humans chose certain death over the possibility of galactic extinction. "The representative from Terra will now address the Council," Executor Vexhai announced, his tone carrying none of the condescension that had marked their previous encounter. Elena activated her presentation device, displaying data about humanity's ongoing research into dimensional threats and defensive technologies. But before beginning her formal report, she looked around the chamber at representatives from hundreds of species who owed their existence to human sacrifice. "Honored members of the Council," Elena began, "6 months ago, Earth warned this assembly about an existential threat to galactic civilization. Our warnings were dismissed as the fears of a primitive species. Today, I stand before you not to demand apologies or recognition, but to remind you of something important." She paused, letting her words carry across the chamber, where absolute silence had fallen. "The next time a species you consider primitive or inexperienced brings you a warning about threats you don't understand, listen. Because the universe doesn't care about your experience or your technology when extinction comes calling. It only cares about who has the courage to stand in the gap." Elena concluded her address and prepared to present humanity's research data, knowing that the galaxy had learned a hard lesson about the value of diverse perspectives and the danger of dismissing warnings from unexpected sources. The Void Swarm was gone, but the principles that had motivated humanity's response would echo through galactic history for millennia to come. In the end, Elena thought, humanity's greatest victory was not destroying an unstoppable enemy, but proving that sometimes the galaxy's salvation came from its youngest and most underestimated members. The universe had a sense of irony, and it had chosen Earth's children to teach ancient civilizations that wisdom and experience meant nothing without the courage to act when action was required.